John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day of Hour of Devastation Previews. We got some good cards to look at today. The last couple days felt a little flatter compared to some of the previous days, but they're going out with a bang with some really good cards today. Now, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support us, one of which is our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases there, a small percentage will come back to help us out. Always appreciated. And secondly, you'll find our Patreon page down there as well. With that out of the way, let's get into today's cards. And we'll begin with some tokens. Now, Wizards has done a relatively good job this time around at showing us tokens as they were premiering cards. But today, they did show all the tokens in the set, and there were a few we hadn't seen yet, and those are displayed here for you. We have our Horse token, Champion of Wits, Dream Stealer, Earthshaker Kenra, Sunscorched Champion, and finally a Snake token. So I just want to make sure you got a chance to see those. All right, let's move on to the cards. And we'll begin with a series of cards that were premiered today on the Paste website. Now, the larger news outlets like Paste, Nerdist, Entertainment Weekly, Wizards gives them preview cards, but they don't give them rares or mythics typically. They give them like a bunch of commons and uncommons. So that's what you're going to see here, but we'll quickly go through these, and a lot of these are very playable in limited formats. We have Dutiful Servants. This costs a white and 3. It's a zombie common 2/5 vanilla. Now, you may recognize that art as an art swipe from Those Who Serve and Amonkhet, and there's actually some pretty cool flavor here. They got a little tougher this time around. Now they're 2/5s instead of 2/4s, but I really like what they did just flavor-wise with this card. The card's not for every limited deck, but you probably are familiar with this card basically in its form from Amonkhet, where it's a good card in certain builds if you're trying to slow down the game a little bit, or you need a blocker or something like that. And this card fulfills that role just the same. Mummy Paramount, a white and 1 zombie common 2/2, and when another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, this will get +1/+1 till end of turn. So basically a 2/2 for 2 with upside. Those are always good and limited. You'll be happy to play them. Sometimes you just simply need 2 drops in your limited games. This does have an upside, especially if you have some zombies in your deck, or maybe you're playing a bomb or Eternalize, and it's just enough of an upside to make me play this over maybe some other 2 drops in certain builds. Next, we have Wretched Camel, another 2-drop. This is a black and 1 zombie camel, common, 2/1. When this dies, if you control a desert or there's a desert card in your graveyard, target player discards a card. I'm usually not a huge fan of 2/1s for 2s because typically you can find enough 2/2s for 2 to play, but if I can't for some reason, it's there for me. But secondly, if I'm on the desert plan, and there are some interesting desert strategies, I think, in the limited environment, especially if you're drafting them, then this definitely becomes worth it and maybe even playable over a 2/2 for 2. And finally, you have Manticore Eternal. This one is a uncommon. It is 2 red and 3 zombie Manticore with Afflict 3, 5/4. It does attack each combat if able. Nice big kind of dumb beater for red in limited formats again. Not going to necessarily always see play depending on what other high-end creatures you have, but if you need something like this, it will be just fine for you for sure. Alright, here's 5 more cards from another big news outlet, the Nerdist, and these are actually pretty good. They're all commons though. There's some interesting ones here though. Seer of the Last Tomorrow is a blue and 2. It's a Naga Cleric, and you can pay a blue, tap, discard a card. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. It's a 1/4. So I pondered the other day when we saw the other mill card that was previewed. I wonder if there's a common mill card that could help support that format a little bit in draft. And here it is, I guess. I'm still not sold that it's a good draft strategy, though, unfortunately, because there's so many things that your opponent can play just out of the graveyard. Last set had Embalm. This set has Eternalize. Both sets had Aftermath, right? So that could backfire on you. It might be an okay backup plan as a plan B in a deck, but I don't know if I would go all in here. This is likely more beneficial as a card that you use to mill yourself, perhaps, to try to hit some of those Eternalize and Bomb cards, Aftermath cards into your graveyard. So it's interesting. It's not for all decks, obviously, but it's there when you need it. Tragic Lesson. A blue and 2 instant, draw 2 cards and discard a card unless you return a land you control to its owner's hand. Alright, I like this card a lot, actually. And first off, it's an instant. So that works for me when it comes to even possibly standard control decks, or other blue decks too. And standard may actually want something like this. Drawing 2 cards at instant speed is actually awesome. The drawback, I think you can mitigate. Now, Control decks, I'm thinking a lot of times they don't want to miss land drops and such, but they do, at least later in the game, have some extra lands that are a little bit expendable. They can return one, hopefully, for this, and I think still be okay. And the upside being they still get to hold up their counter magic, and they then get to cycle this and basically draw another card. Also, if you use this on your turn and do it during your first or second main phase, for example, you can play this, return the land to your hand that you tapped to cast it, and then replay the land untapped. That's actually kind of sweet too. So it becomes a 2 casting cost, draw 2 cards. That feels a lot better in some cases, and I think a lot of decks may opt to simply play it that way once they have enough mana down on the board. So yeah, this one is really good. I think this will see standard play. Great for you too in limited. Life goes on. This costs a green. It's an instant. You gain 4 life. If a creature died this turn, you gain 8 life instead. So we did see the horse yesterday that when you gain life, it makes a 5/5 horse token. So that's appealing to think about maybe in draft or even sealed. Typically, I probably would say without the horse, though, this is definitely a sideboard card for me because I don't necessarily want to play this until I see what my opponent's playing. If they're on an aggressive deck that's doing a lot of early damage to me, then maybe I board this in and feel pretty good about it. Even in standard, if there's a red or Rakdos or Boros aggressive deck that does well in the format at some point, then this could even see sideboard play there potentially. Ronus is Stalwart. This is a green and 1 2/2 human warrior. You may exert this as it attacks. If you do, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. Now, this is a great 2-drop again for your limited formats. I love the 2/2 for 2s with upside. The bears with upside are always good. And I like this upside quite a bit actually because you can play this on turn 2. Your opponent will go ahead and respond maybe with their own 2/2. You can exert and attack in with a 3/3 next turn. It's a little slow, granted, because it won't untap the next turn and you'll possibly be taking 2 back. But I do like the card. I think it's a very good 2-drop. And finally, Survivor's Encampment. This is a land desert. Tap to add colorless to your mana pool, or tap and tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So good color fixing for your limited formats again here. And what I like about this card especially is it doesn't slow you down. It might make your color requirements a little stringent early on the game if this happens to be one of the lands you draw and you decide not to mulligan, but at the same time, it's going to be good for you, I think, in the long run, especially if you're splashing a 3rd color or something like that. It'll be just fine. And the art looks incredible. I can't wait to see that one in foil. Next, we have Strategic Planning. This costs a blue and 1. It's a sorcery comment. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So I like this card a lot too. Simply, it can populate your graveyard. It lets you dig for something that might be useful within your top 3 cards. It's sorcery speed, but it's pretty cheap at 2. Great card in limited, whether you're looking for a graveyard strategy or just simply playing blue and want to dig a little deeper into your deck and see cards quicker. Fantastic common there. Maybe at some point could see some standard play. I mean, there's other cards out there that already do this and probably do it better, but in the future, maybe post-rotation, who knows what we'll have. Now, here we go. The big card of the day, Hour of Devastation. I mean, it's named after the set. It's got to be great, right? 2 red and 3. Sorcery. Rare. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolas planeswalker. Wow. So they're not playing around here. I mean, this deals with a lot of things. It deals with indestructible creatures like the gods very well. It deals in most cases with planeswalkers, unless they have high loyalty at the time or it's a Bolas planeswalker. It deals with most creatures. I mean, granted, big creatures still survive, but it's just doing a lot of damage for 5 mana, and it's really reshaping the board. You can use this to your advantage, obviously, in big red style decks. If you have a lot of large creatures in red, then hopefully you'll be impacted less than everybody else. That's kind of the plan. But even if you're just playing a normal red deck with a lot of small creatures, this isn't necessarily a bad thing in those cases either, because how many times have you played an aggro deck where you attack in early with your small creatures, you get your opponent down to like 8 or something, they start playing creatures with big toughness and you can't get by anymore, you're not drawing your burn spells, and you just start losing. Well, this card does help you out of that situation, basically sweeping the board for the most part, and then giving you a few more turns to draw into those burn spells, or maybe letting you put down some more cheap creatures and get some haste attacks in or something like that and finish off your opponent. It actually works there as well as it works in a big red deck, I think. So yeah, this just deals with so many problems. Because of that, because it can hit gods, because it can hit planeswalkers, hit most of the creatures and take them out, this will see standard play. This is a pretty big deal, I think. I kind of wonder if this could potentially even see modern play in some places. I'm trying to think where it would fit. I mean, 5 feels a tad expensive when you're talking about modern, when you have things like Damnation out there. But if there is a problem at any time with Indestructible or Planeswalkers, I mean, this does deal with a lot of different things, and that versatility might get it there at some point. Also, limited games, yeah, seal, draft, you'll be real happy to play this, no doubt. If you're winning, okay, then it might sit in your hand and you don't need it, but that's alright because you're winning. If you're not winning, then this can definitely help you win. Majestic Myriarch. This one's pretty crazy too. It's a green and 4. This one's a mythic chimera. Its power and toughness are equal to twice the number of creatures you control. At the beginning of each combat, if you control a creature with flying, this gains flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Wow. Okay, so we've seen cards like this before, but the fact that this thing can be twice the power and toughness of the amount of creatures you have on the board, this gets really crazy really fast. I do think this is standard playable. First off, I do want to say too, this was previewed by Magic Mike's yesterday evening, and this is a great preview card. I mean, this is really awesome. Fantastic in Commander, obviously. I don't even think I need to say that. A little weird it's not legendary, because it feels like this is a card you might even want to be your Commander, but okay, it's not legendary. We'll get past it. Still good in Commander, and it does help for the fact that in constructed formats like Standard, you can now run, of course, more than one of these on the battlefield at once. So that's kind of crazy, too, to think, right? So, yeah, this card, I think we'll see Standard play. I'm thinking of maybe like Celestia Humans decks, maybe making a comeback with something like this. This could be the top end of the curve, a lot of small creatures with some little abilities here and there, throw in a First Strike, throw in a Haste, something like that. All of a sudden, you have something pretty powerful that just leaps out of nowhere, right? This card feels really, really aggressive to me, and it's super competitively costed at 5, only 1 on color. Definitely a great card for Standard, and certainly a fantastic card to pull in your limited games as well. Next is Leave to Chance. I've thought a lot about this card, and I kind of go back and forth a little bit. We'll kind of talk through it. It's a white 1 instant rare. Return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. Chance, a red and 3 sorcery aftermath. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Alright, so when I first saw this card, the first thing that jumped into my head was Seismic Assault. And maybe that could be a thing in Modern. Now, I haven't played that deck in Modern firsthand, so it's hard for me to say for sure. I'd like to test it, though. Feels like this could be really great there, right? Just pick up your land, start pitching them at people, right? So that seems cool. Secondly, my mind went to Limited. How often are you in situations in Limited where you have like 10 lands on the battlefield and you only need like 6 for your deck to work, and you're just kind of drawing into more lands and you're starting to fall behind on board state? Well, here's a card that you could play for 2 mana at instant speed on the end of your opponent's turn. Return like 4 of those 10 lands to your hand, leave 6 on the battlefield. Next turn, play the chance side for 4. Discard those 4 lands, draw 4 new cards, and hopefully hit some heat. That kind of feels sort of amazing, right? So, I don't know, I really like that idea too. Not to mention just the simple fact that maybe if you're trying to get this to work in Standard or even still in Limited, that you could pick up stuff that has enter the battlefield effects. You could pick up your Castaway if you want to change targets onto something else. It's a permanent, so I mean, it affects any permanent you want. That's kind of amazing. So I really like this card. It feels really versatile. It feels a little counterintuitive to what you're taught, and that's the fact that you don't really want to go backwards on board state, especially in the chance case. Going backwards in board state to draw more cards feels high variance, but there's times where I feel like it actually could be good for you. So I want to watch this card closely. This could be a complete dud. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like there's a lot of potential behind this. Next, we have Abandoned Sarcophagus. It costs 3. It's an artifact, rare. You may cast non-land cards with cycling from your graveyard. If a card with cycling would be put into your graveyard from anywhere and it wasn't cycled, exile it instead. Okay, so I can cast non-land cycling cards from my graveyard just like they're in my hand? Yeah, sign me up. This actually feels good. Now, my only concern with this card is it might feel a little slow, and if you're up against an aggressive deck, you might not have time for this to all work out for you. But you play this on turn 3, and whatever cycling cards are in your graveyard, it's almost like you just drew them. They're just in your hands, is what this feels like. So, turn 1, you cycle something. Turn 2, maybe you play 2-drop. Turn 3, you play this, and you've already replaced it because now you have access to that card in your graveyard. This feels like it could be really good in certain circumstances. Now, limited, I would love to draft this around a whole bunch of cycling cards and see how that goes. I feel like that could be really great. Also, I kind of wonder about standard. Would the New Perspectives deck want something like this? I don't know. Again, I'd have to test that out. I haven't, again, played New Perspectives firsthand, but it feels like it might be interesting to try there. Yeah, this card, especially when you go deeper into Magic's past, there's some good cycling cards out there. Now, my only fear, though, is this might be a little too slow for Modern or for Legacy, but again, I'd like to try it out. It just seems really intriguing. It's another card I feel like maybe it's a complete dud and I'm misreading it, but I feel like there's a lot of potential here. Having said that, those are the cards for today. Now, yesterday I did a second video later in the evening because there were a lot of previews. We'll see what happens today. My thought is, though, I think we've already seen all the mythics and rares, so if they do show us more, they might be sort of underwhelming cards. If that's the case, I won't do a whole video about them, but we will be talking about them because starting tomorrow, we're going to begin our full set review, beginning with all of the white cards. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.